My future mother-in-law leaned in and said, "You'll always be second in his life," right before I was ready to go down the aisle. "Recognize your position." With a small smile, my fiancé remarked, "She's just looking out for me." "Good," I answered with a smile, because I'm looking out for myself, too. He was astonished to see what I had done a few minutes later. I ought to have noticed the warning signs sooner. Daniel and I first met 4 years ago in New York at a charity function. He was successful, personable, and gave me a sense of exclusivity. He was attractive, wealthy, and well-educated, all of which I believed I want. He was from a wealthy family. In contrast, I was a self-made lawyer who earned everything via hard effort. Marjorie, his mother, was very clear that she didn't want me for her son. She said things like, "Oh, your parents don't have a summer house in the Hamptons," without directly insulting me. That's not the same. Or it may be. It's impressive you got through law school without family connections. It was obvious that she didn't think I was suitable for them. I initially disregarded it. I convinced myself that I didn't require her blessing. It was Daniel, not his mother, that I adored. However, it soon became apparent to me that Daniel never defended me. He simply shrugged when she said something nasty, saying, "That's just how she is." He would minimize it if I brought it up later. "It has no meaning for her. You're overreacting, darling." I finally persuaded myself that love was sufficient. I was mistaken, even if his mother didn't like me. It was meant to be the ideal wedding. His mother suggested that we make reservations at the Plaza Hotel in New York. Everything was hers, including the food, the chairs, and the flowers. She insisted on having 400 guests, including her friends and business associates, even though I wanted a quiet wedding. I gave it up. I saw Marjorie whispering something to Daniel during the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding. He smirked as he looked at me after laughing. I asked him what she said, but he dismissed it. "Nothing, sweetie. She simply finds it amusing that you worry so much about little matters." That was the first indication that something wasn't right. My bridesmaids helped me put on my dress on the morning of the wedding. Roses and pricey perfume filled the air. I felt uneasy, even though I should have been excited. Then, as though she was attempting to steal the show, Marjorie entered wearing almost all white. "You'll always be second in his life," she said, leaning in close as she peered at me. "Recognize your position." I felt sick to my stomach. She didn't laugh or say it was a joke, which was what I was expecting. She simply grinned as though she had triumphed. Then Daniel walked in. I turned to him, hoping he'd stand up for me. Instead, he chuckled and said, "She's just looking out for me." In that moment, I knew I was done. I had ignored the red flags for too long, but they didn't know I had already prepared. Over the last few months, something felt off with Daniel. He was always on his phone, going on mysterious business trips. And his best man, Ethan, was acting strangely around me. So I did what any smart woman would do. I hired a private investigator. What I found was shocking. Daniel wasn't just hiding something, he was hiding someone. Her name was Rebecca, his ex. The same Rebecca his mom always talked about as the one that got away. Daniel and Rebecca had been secretly meeting at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston for months. I had photos, videos, and text messages. He called me boring, saying I was just a placeholder. The worst part? Marjorie knew about it and approved. I kept the information to myself for weeks. I could have confronted him right away or called off the wedding, but that would have been too easy. Instead, I decided to give him a show. I walked down the aisle, calm on the outside, but anxious inside. Guests smiled at me. Marjorie smirked, thinking she had one. Daniel beamed, clueless. When we reached the altar, the priest began. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath, looked into Daniel's eyes, and smiled. "Before we begin, I just want to share something with everyone here." I turned to the projector screen behind us. The lights dimmed and the screen lit up. Then everything, photos, texts, and videos appeared. Daniel laughing with Rebecca in hotel lobbies. Texts where he called me a chore. The guests gasped. Marjorie froze. And Daniel turned pale, his hands trembling. He looked at me, then at the screen, realizing he couldn't fix it. But I wasn't done yet. I turned back to Daniel, still smiling, and whispered, "I deserve better." Then I let go of his hands. Silence filled the room. Then chaos erupted. Gasps filled the air. A chair scraped the floor as someone stood, either in shock or disgust. The atmosphere felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath. Daniel turned pale, his hands shaking at his sides. Marjorie stood frozen, her mouth moving, but no words coming out. I turned away from them, stepping toward my bridesmaids. They looked at me with a mix of shock, admiration, and joy. Then Daniel finally spoke. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked. I tilted my head, unfazed. "Looks like proof." Daniel's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. The 400 guests watched him, waiting, whispering. His father, a serious Wall Street mogul, glared at him, clearly disappointed. "This is fake," Daniel said, his voice desperate. He turned to the priest. Can we move on? She's pulling a prank." I laughed. That was the last straw. People started whispering louder. One of his groomsmen even muttered something under his breath and took a step back, not wanting to be part of this mess. Then a sharp voice cut through the noise. "She's not lying, Danny." The room went silent again. I turned. It was Ethan, the best man. His face was tight, jaw clenched. Daniel whipped around to face him. "What the hell are you talking about?" Ethan looked at me, his voice thick. I knew about Rebecca." "What?" Daniel's voice wavered. Ethan didn't look at Daniel. His eyes were still on me. "I wanted to tell you." I tried, but I thought you already knew. My chest tightened. I had expected many things today. Shock, anger, maybe a loud outburst. But this was new. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Ethan took a deep breath, shaking his head. "Rebecca, she wasn't the only one." My stomach dropped. I'd prepared for one betrayal, one affair. But this was beyond what I was ready for. "Explain," I said, my voice sharp. Daniel shook his head, his voice frantic. "Don't listen to him. He's just trying to ruin everything." Ethan snapped back at him. "Shut the hell up, Danny." The room was dead silent again. Daniel looked stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Ethan turned back to me. "It's not just Rebecca," he paused, then added, "There were others. And some of them weren't just flings." Everything around me tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "How many?" I forced the question out. Ethan's eyes met mine, guilt clear on his face. "At least 3 that I know of." The crowd exploded. 3. Not just 1. 3. Daniel lunged at Ethan, his face red with anger. "You're lying. You're making things up." Ethan didn't move. He just stared back at him, disgust on his face. "Dude, stop. You got caught. Just own it." Marjorie snapped out of her shock and stormed toward me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She clenched her fists and shouted, "Enough. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think humiliating my son in front of all these people makes you the better person." I raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh honey, I don't think I know." Marjorie's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this," she warned. Then she raised her hand as if to slap me. The crowd gasped, but before she could touch me, Ethan stepped in. His face was cold and serious. He grabbed her wrist and held it firmly. "Don't even think about it," he said, his voice low and threatening. Marjorie froze, clearly surprised someone was standing up to her. Ethan leaned closer, speaking only to her. "Your son ruined his own life, not her." Marjorie's face twisted with rage. "You were supposed to be his best man. How dare you betray him?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm tired of protecting a man who doesn't deserve it." For the first time, Daniel looked afraid. Guests started shifting in their seats, whispering, and some pulled out their phones, probably recording everything. I overheard bits of conversation. "This is crazy. Can you believe his own best man turned on him?" The tension in the room was unbearable. Then Daniel did something I didn't expect. He turned to me, pale and shaking, and dropped to his knees. The murmurs and gasps spread through the crowd. I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Inside, I was calm, but everything was burning. "Baby, please," he begged, his voice cracking. I almost laughed. Baby? This man, this lying, cheating coward, was still trying to talk his way out of it. I crossed my arms. "Get up." His eyes were wild, like a trapped animal. "I can fix this. We can fix this," he pleaded. There it was. The classic manipulation. Not "I'm sorry" or "I made a mistake." Just "let's fix this," like it was something we were both in together. One of my cousins scoffed from the back. My bridesmaids whispered angrily, their faces a mix of shock and rage. "I don't think there's anything to fix, Daniel," I said coolly. I turned my back on him, letting the silence speak for itself. Then a woman's voice cut through the silence. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." Heads turned. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was tall and confident, wearing a deep green gown, but her face was filled with fury. Daniel's eyes widened in panic. "No, no, no," he muttered under his breath. Marjorie whipped around to face the woman. For the first time, she looked nervous. She started. I raised an eyebrow. "Who the hell is this?" The woman stormed up the aisle, her heels clicking sharply. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were locked on Marjorie. "How dare you lecture her about knowing her place when you've never known yours?" the woman snapped. The room went silent. Daniel looked like he might pass out. Marjorie's lips pressed into a thin line. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "Oh, I should have been here a long time ago," the woman shot back, turning to me. "You must be the fiancé." I corrected her with a cold smile. "Slowly becoming the ex-fiancé." The woman smirked. "You might want to sit down for this." I didn't move. "Who are you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She tilted her head, then turned back to Daniel, her eyes sharp. "I'm his father's mistress." Gasps filled the room. I swear I heard a champagne glass drop. Daniel looked like he might faint. Daniel's father, who had been quiet until now, stood up, his face red with anger. "Catherine," he began. But Catherine raised her hand to stop him. "No, don't you Catherine me," she sneered. "Not after you dragged me into this mess." I glanced at Daniel. He looked like he wanted to disappear. "Marjorie," Catherine continued, shaking with rage. "You have no right to be here." "She's fat." "Marjorie's fat." "No right." Catherine laughed harshly. "Sweetheart, I have more right than anyone. You think you're the only one who gets to play puppet master? You've been cheating on your husband for years, and now you want to act like some perfect society queen." "Wait, what?" I blinked, trying to process. The room went dead silent. Daniel turned slowly to his mother. "Mom?" His voice was uncertain. Marjorie's mouth pressed into a tight line. But Catherine wasn't done. "Oh, poor Daniel," she mocked. "Your mommy never told you she's been having an affair for years. And guess what? Your father knew." The room erupted. Daniel's father locked eyes with Marjorie, his face cold. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Marjorie opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then she snapped. "Are you really going to take the word of your expletive?" The crowd gasped. Catherine smirked. "A expletive?" she repeated, her voice sharp. Big talk for someone who's been sleeping with the same tennis instructor for 6 years. Marjorie lost it and lunged at Catherine. But Daniel's father grabbed her wrist and stopped her. "Enough," he said firmly. Marjorie stood there, staring at Daniel like her whole world had fallen apart. "Mom, is this true?" Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. Marjorie's nostrils flared. She looked around, from me to the guests, to the people watching the chaos unfold. I knew that look. It was the look of someone who had lost control. "It doesn't matter," she snapped. "This is between me and your father." But Daniel shook his head, disbelief washing over him. "You made my entire life about being better than Dad." He whispered, "You told me he was a disappointment, that he was the reason we had to be careful about our name." He let out a bitter laugh. "But all this time you were just like him." The room was thick with tension. I could see it in Daniel's face. Everything he believed was falling apart. I should have felt sorry for him, but I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized why he was the way he was. Marjorie had raised him to be cold, calculating, entitled. But now she had been exposed, just like him. And Daniel, for the first time in his life, looked truly alone. And me? I wasn't done yet. I took a slow step forward, locking eyes with him. "You and your mother always looked down on me," I said, my voice calm, steady, and final. I let the silence stretch, letting my words sink in. "But now you're the ones covered in dirt." Just as I said that, the doors flew open with a loud bang. A new voice echoed through the ballroom. "Sorry I'm late. Did I miss anything?" I turned, and there she was. Rebecca. The door slammed open, and everyone looked toward the entrance. Rebecca walked in, tall, blonde, wearing a red dress that was way too revealing for a wedding. She held a small purse in one hand and looked calm, way too calm. I couldn't help but smile. "Perfect timing," I said loudly, so Daniel could hear. "Daniel," I called out. He looked like he'd been hit in the stomach. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked, his voice full of panic. Rebecca stepped forward, totally unfazed. "Relax, sweetheart. You invited me." The whole room gasped. His fists clenched. "I didn't." Rebecca pulled out her phone. "No." "Then who sent me this?" she asked, showing everyone the screen. It was a message from Daniel, sent 2 nights ago. "I can't stop thinking about you. I wish this wedding wasn't happening. You were always the one." The room went silent, then exploded with whispers. "Is he serious? His fiancée is right there." I turned back to Daniel, raising an eyebrow. "Interesting. You told me you hadn't talked to her in months." His face went pale. Rebecca smirked. "Oh, honey. He's been talking to me for years." Daniel staggered back. "That's not." He tripped over his words. Rebecca folded her arms. "You're really going to deny it?" Then she turned to me, calm and unaffected by the chaos. "I wasn't going to come," she said. "I thought I owed you that much," but then she waved her phone. "He begged me to meet him last night, so I decided to come and see the show." Another gasp from the crowd. Daniel spun to face me. "She's lying." Rebecca laughed. "Am I, babe?" She checked her phone again. Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket, fumbling with it. His eyes widened as he read it. I knew what he saw, dozens of texts he had sent her just hours before the wedding, begging her to meet him secretly. Marjorie snapped. "You idiot," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her voice was sharp and full of rage. Daniel looked at her, stunned. "Mom, you've humiliated this family." Marjorie continued, her voice low and threatening. "You had one job, just one." Daniel blinked, looking like a little boy caught doing something wrong. "You think this is about you?" Marjorie snapped. "Do you know how hard I worked to make this wedding happen? And now look at what you've done." Daniel flinched. "I didn't." "Stop lying, Daniel." For the first time, Marjorie looked at him with nothing but disgust. "You're pathetic." "She's fat," Daniel muttered. The crowd exploded again. Daniel's father stayed silent, his jaw clenched. Ethan stood beside him, arms crossed. Daniel looked lost, like he finally realized there was no way out. Then he turned back to me. "Please," his voice cracked. "I messed up, but we can fix this." I stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed my bouquet and threw it in his face. Gasps filled the room. Some even laughed. The bouquet hit his chest and fell to the floor. Daniel just stood there, shocked. I straightened my dress, turned to the guests, and smiled. "Thank you all for coming," I said sweetly. "The wedding is off, but please enjoy the food." It's already paid for. Then I turned and walked away. And let me tell you, it was the best walk of my life. So, what happened next, Daniel? He was completely disgraced. His law firm quietly let him go because scandals don't mix with business. Word spread fast in New York. No one wants to hire a lawyer with that kind of reputation. Marjorie? She was furious, but too embarrassed to show her face at social events. Being exposed for her own affair made her a social outcast. Rebecca? She went back to her ex-boyfriend. She never wanted Daniel long-term. She just liked knowing she could have him whenever she wanted. Ethan? It turned out he had feelings for me all along. No pressure, just seeing where things go. And me? I went to Paris on my honeymoon alone, using Daniel's black card. I had no regrets. As I sipped champagne, looking out at the Saint at sunset, I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove myself to that family, but in the end, they weren't worth my time.